Hello and welcome to a very special episode of the Toronto Dogcast, the podcast for dog lovers. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about a very difficult and sensitive topic. That's why I don't have a guest besides my boy here, Mosley. Anybody who's watched any of the videos that I have on my channel knows Mosley really well. And we're going to talk about what to do when your dog gets diagnosed with cancer or gets sick in any other way. And I'm going to be talking about my approach. First off, the reason why I decided to do this podcast is to take a negative and turn it into some sort of a positive. The whole purpose of this podcast when I started it was to help as many dogs and dog owners as possible. So that's why I decided to do this. I also just want to answer a lot of questions that people have been asking me in one go instead of having to repeat myself. Mosley's 13. He's okay, here we go. I might have to get sunglasses for this. Okay, let's get through this. Mosley is 13 years old. I've had him since he was a puppy, and yeah, this is going to be hard to get through. Last week, Mosley was diagnosed with cancer, and there's nothing much they can do about it. All right, here we go. Last week, Mosley was diagnosed with cancer, and there's not a lot they can do for him. He's led a really healthy lifestyle, and unfortunately, because of his age, there's not really any operation or anything that they can do to treat it. They gave him about 6 to 8 months, and having a dog is a wonderful thing, and it's probably the best part of my life. But there's going to be a time when you're going to need to deal with heartache and with them getting sick. Jesus. Anybody who's had dogs, including myself, has dealt with dogs dying and dogs getting sick before. But it doesn't make it any easier. And so I thought people could benefit from me talking about some of the techniques, also sharing some of their ideas. And I don't really think this is a topic that a lot of people talk about, and I think it's something that could possibly benefit other dog owners. So I'm going to try to get through this as best I can. So right off the bat, I want to make sure that everybody understands that he's not in any pain, any chronic pain at least right now. He does get acute bouts of pain, so I noticed a lump on him last week, and he also was really sick. He had a lot of diarrhea, and he didn't eat for about a week. So I got really worried about him, and I took him to the vet like any dog owner would, and they ran a bunch of tests, and they found out that he's got cancer. Otherwise, he's super healthy, but they gave him about 6 to 8 months to live. So I'm going to talk about what I'm going to do in that 6 to 8 months and how I'm going to stretch it out as much as possible. But when you get this kind of news, it's devastating. So when you get this kind of news, obviously there's a lot of emotion that you're going to go through. For me, it was a lot of disbelief because Mosley's led a really healthy lifestyle, and he's never had any issues before, so it was hard for me to accept, obviously, at first, and then, like anything that's difficult, you do accept it after a while, and this is going to take forever to record, mostly. And the first challenge that you're going to encounter is just the initial news of either. The news is really hard to hear, obviously, and don't get me wrong, I've gone through personal tragedy in my life. Doesn't make it any easier, and the thing is, with dogs, it's very unique because they're such a big part of your life, and it's a different type of relationship than what you have with other people. And not to say that the relationships that you're going to have with other people are any more or less valuable or special. They're just different. So the relationship that you have with your parents or your friends is different. Everybody knows how much dogs mean to me. And I don't have a family of my own, so my dogs, they're my family. So the initial feeling is one of disbelief and then complete and utter devastation. It took a while for it to sink in. I was like, how long is this going to take? It took a while for it to sink in. And when it did, the feeling of devastation was pretty overwhelming. And I know this is going to sound a little nuts, but once the initial shock, once it's kind of sunk in, the feeling was one of being overwhelmed. It was really difficult to breathe. And there's definitely a sensation of almost being able to feel your heart breaking. It's one of those feelings where you grab your heart and you can physically feel You can physically feel your heart aching. The sensation is horrible, but you kind of have to take a minute and just let it sink in. Immediately your thoughts go to yourself, actually. And that's hard to admit, is that you think about how much it's going to hurt, how much it actually does hurt, and how much you're going to miss them. And you get angry because they're innocent and they don't do anything to deserve their lives being cut short. But once you get through that initial phase of negative emotion, you have to figure out what to do, basically. And that's where I think I can start to help people who have gone through this type of situation before or will at some point go through this situation. And even though I've been through it before with family members passing away and other dogs dying, it's still really difficult, especially with the dog like Mosley, which he's been with me since he was a puppy. He's gone through a bunch of highs and lows with me, good times and bad. All my work that I've done with dogs that have behavioral problems, the hundreds, if not thousands of dogs that I've worked with over the years, Mosley's been a really big part of that. And he's helped a lot of dogs. So he's really done Mosley's really done a lot more in his life than just be part of my family. And not to take anything away from dogs that are just a member of your family and somebody that you or just part of your family, some like a pet and companion and a loved one. But Mosley has really done a lot in his life. He's accomplished a ton. So I think it hit me really, 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 really hard. And the other thing that it didn't help was a few weeks ago, someone who's really close to me passed away. And then last week, I lost my job. And on top of that, I found out about Mosley. So needless to say, it was a really rough few weeks. And I was already in a really bad way before I found out about Mosley. So even if I was at the peak of happiness and I found out about Mosley, it wouldn't have mattered. But the fact that there was already a lot that I was dealing with made it extra hard. And you'll go through the gambit of emotions. Obviously sadness, anger, frustration, they're all negative. Trying to decide what to do is really difficult because you're so distraught, you're so heartbroken that you just don't know what to do. And I remember thinking to myself, I just have to breathe. Like, I was actually trying to focus on something that simple because I was beside myself. Once I got over the initial shock and started to figure out what to do, I really debated telling people because I knew it was going to devastate a lot of other people who had known Mosley and who know me. And I did decide to tell some people, and obviously they were really upset as well. And I made a decision to protect the people that I really cared about in a strange way. And I'm not going to recommend this technique to anyone out there, but it's what I did. Because I was already in a really bad place and I was already going through a lot of negative emotions. When I found out about Mosley, it was too much for me to handle. And I didn't think it was fair that I subjected other people to what I was going through. So I made a decision, and it wasn't a very good decision, but I still made a decision to distance myself from some people that I cared about because I wanted to protect them. I didn't want them to have to deal with what I was going through because I know it was going to affect them in a really negative way, and it was going to bring up a lot of negative emotion in them, and it was going to depress them, and it was going to upset them, and I just didn't want to be responsible for that, and I didn't want them to have to suffer. Like I said, I don't think it's a good technique, but it's because of everything that had happened in the last few weeks and the state that I was in. You got to remember when you're experiencing a lot of emotional trauma that you're not necessarily thinking straight, you're just kind of reacting to the pain in whichever way you think is going to be best, even though on a clear-headed day you might not think that's a good idea, and somebody else might be like, God, that's so stupid. But you got to remember, like, being in that state is not easy for anyone, and it's definitely not the type of situation where you're like, oh yeah, this is a really good idea. Sometimes you just do things to protect other people even though you know it's going to upset them. And I made that decision, and it wasn't a good one. At the end of the day, when I'm going through it, I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy, let alone one of my good friends or people that I care about. So how you decide to deal with it is totally up to you. And I'm sure people are going to criticize me for it, and that's fine. You know, you make decisions, and when you're in that type of situation, you're going to make bad choices sometimes. And those bad choices have consequences, and you're going to have to live with those consequences. So anyway, if you have a really supportive network of family and friends that can help you out, that's great. But for me, I think it was one of those things where I didn't want anybody else to feel the way I was feeling. So, moving on. Going to talk about depression because it's a real thing, and I'm going to talk about grief, and I'm going to talk about the things that I am going to do to get out of this funk and to focus on spending as much quality time with my dog as possible. So depression isn't not a very fun topic, obviously, and because of all the things that had happened before I found out about Mosley, when I found out about Mosley, you just don't understand like how much darker and deeper the depression can actually be until you actually feel it and experience it. So it's hard to describe. It's kind of like being at the bottom of the ocean where it's very cold, it's very dark, and you have this weight that is all around you. And the weight is one that's inescapable. You go to sleep and it's all you can think about. You wake up in the morning and it's the first thing that rushes into your mind. It's always there. It's very persistent and it's very inescapable, almost. And the more you struggle against it, the worse it feels because you're just not getting anywhere. So I had to really do a lot of thinking about what I need to do for Mosley. And believe it or not, it was Mosley who made me feel better. Dogs are very in tune to your emotions. They don't know what's happening. They don't understand why you're upset. They don't understand why you're sad or why you're heartbroken. But they know that there's something wrong. And so they try to help. And so when I was sitting there, Mosley would just come up to me and put his head on my lap and just look up at me like, hey, what's wrong? Like, you know, so that made me feel a lot better. And it reminded me that what I was going through emotionally, however negative it was, it's not what I wanted for Mosley. So I really decided pretty much then and there that if I want to really help my dog, I can't be heartbroken and distraught. I have to find a way out of it. So just reminding myself that for Mosley to be happy, that means I can't be devastated. I can't be walking around the house in a daze, or not wanting to get up out of bed in the morning, or thinking terrible thoughts or anything like that. I had to get out of it. And what I recommend to people in terms of what I did is just to focus on the dogs, to take yourself and say, okay, fine, you're feeling all these emotions, you're going through all this pain, but it's time to just focus on this guy. And also on my other dog, Mackenzie, because when you're upset, she picks up on it too. And I knew it was going to be an uphill battle. I knew it was going to be really difficult. But I started focusing on thinking of things that would make him happy. And dogs are very simple in terms of the things that make them happy. They don't need, fancy cars. They don't need a fat bank account or anything like that. They just enjoy the really simple things in life. And by far, one of the best things that they enjoy is things like just spending time with you and going for a walk and having some fun playing with the ball and chewing on a bone and doing like dog stuff. So I sat down and I made a list of Mosley's favorite things to do, and lo and behold, most of those things on that list were also my favorite things to do as well. So that's what I did to begin the process of getting out of my funk. And it's going to take a long time, but I have to learn how to manage the negative emotions instead of letting them take over. So the friends that I lost because of my decision to protect them from what I'm going through, again, I'm going to have to just live with that, but I just need to focus on Mosley right now. So, think about it this way. You're trying to climb a sheer cliff and you don't see a way up. And you start grasping onto the littlest foothold. And it's those tiny little things that you can look forward to that will help get you out of the overwhelmingly difficult emotional state that you're in. So making a list of all your dog's favorite things to do, that's going to help. And then looking forward to those things, finding something to look forward to, anything, will help in the smallest way. It's not going to make everything all of a sudden better, but it's going to help. When it comes to other people who are out there who might be watching this, who have friends or family who are going through a loss of a dog or getting the news that your dog is sick, what I would say to you is don't focus on feeling sorry or sympathy is a nice thing, but it's not what really people need. Pity isn't what people need. I don't want people to feel sorry for me. I don't want people to feel sorry for Mosley. Mosley's had a great life. He's had a lot of fun. He's made a lot of friends. He's done a lot in his life. And he's lived a really good full life. Like, he's almost 13. So, I don't want people to be sad for me. The best thing that you can do, in my opinion, is just to be there and not to necessarily talk about how sick he is or how he's feeling constantly. I mean, I'm really sick of people asking me how I'm doing. I'm not doing good. But I always feel bad when people are like, "Are you okay?" And I just want to say, no, I'm not okay. But that's rude, right? So that's part of the reason why I chose to spare my family and friends from really dealing with this, is because I didn't want them to have to deal with this all the time. And asking me, "Are you okay?" or "How are you doing?" or "How's Mosley doing?" Like, it's just like ripping the wound open every time I have to talk about it, and I just don't want to do it anymore. I just want to focus on the good things and on giving him the best life that I can, which I already have. Obviously, you can't wait till your dog gets sick to be like, okay, now I'm going to do all the things that I should have done. Mosley's had a great life. So I'm going to basically keep doing what I have been doing, and I'm going to focus on coming up with as many dietary solutions to help him through this time. And I might spoil him a little bit more than I normally do, but other than that, he's going to keep getting his 3 walks a day. He's still going to get his off-leash time every day. He's still going to meet lots of other dogs. He's still going to do all the things that he loves to do and that make him happy. So my advice to those people out there who are the family or the friends of somebody else who's going through this is just to be there, to be understanding and compassionate, and to not focus on feeling sorry or sympathizing with that person. Just be your normal self. Like, crack jokes, do things that, that person would enjoy. Kind of distract them from what's going on, right? And focus on making new memories and good ones and having fun. And I think the other thing I would say in terms of what you could do is just cut them some slack. I mean, I can only speak for myself, but people who are going through this type of difficult situation, and I think that's putting it mildly, they're going to say things and they're going to do things that they maybe shouldn't, right? And people are very quick to judge. And I don't blame them, because that's their prerogative, but at the same time, empathy goes a long way in terms of just saying, like, there's probably things that they're going to say and do that are out of character for that person, and I'm not justifying those types of actions because just because you're really depressed or angry or sad or heartbroken, it doesn't then give you justification to say or do things that you shouldn't. I'm not trying to say that. I'm just trying to say that if you're a friend or a family member of somebody who's going through a really tragic experience in their life, just kind of cut them some slack and understand that dealing with somebody who's heartbroken is very difficult. I'm inconsolable. It's just going to take some time, and Mosley and I are going to do it on our own, and he's going to support me, and I'm going to support him, and we're going to get through it. And when I wake up in the morning, eventually I'm going to have to get to the point where I don't have to remind myself to breathe in and breathe out. I don't have to rush into the living room to find Mosley to see if he's okay. I just want to get back to just enjoying my life with Mosley and making whatever time he's got left the best time I can make it, and thinking about him first instead of myself. It's really hard to admit that your first inclination is one of being selfish, but it's true. I'm gonna miss him. I know this isn't a very good podcast, everyone, and I know this is a very crap topic, and Mosley is fidgeting because he doesn't want to sit on the couch anymore. But please be kind in the comments if you are going to comment. And there's a reason why my tagline is, if you love your dog, take him for a walk. Because it's something that's going to make them happy. And don't wait. Don't wait for the day when you get bad news to say that your dog isn't well or is sick. Give them a really good life. Enjoy every single day. And, people ask me sometimes, they're like, yeah, well, if you know that it's going to destroy you when something happens to your dogs, why get another dog? And I mean, that's ridiculous. When people say stuff like that, I'm like, okay, well, why do you have family then? Why do you have friends? Because the reality is that anytime you invest emotionally, whether it's with a person or a friend, you make yourself vulnerable to being hurt. And it shouldn't stop you, but at the same time, it doesn't make it any easier. So my final thoughts on this topic are: focus on the positive. Focus on your dogs. If you are really heartbroken and depressed, grasp on to the little things. Look for any tiny little thing that you know your dog's going to enjoy or that you're going to enjoy with your dog. Never give up hope. And for everybody out there who's dealing with somebody who's experiencing this, just be there for them and cut them some slack. That's it. Like I wish I had better insights or advice, but I really don't. But obviously, if you guys have anything that you want to contribute, please feel free to do so, but do it in a respectful way. We got through it, Mosley. And remember, until next time, if you love your dog, take them for a walk. Okay. Say bye-bye. Bye, Mosley. Bye, Mosley. Say bye, Mosley.